Lovely to meet you too.
So we will be talking today about conversational artificial intelligence and how Paul built it in his company. And I think that it's super useful because, in fact, that's something that could be reused in so many applications. Yeah, I mean, his approach to that was brilliant. And overall, I think that, Paul, also you had a very steep company growth, right, over the past year.
Well, sort of, yes. Yes and no. We moved the company quite a lot in last year. I can talk about where the origins of the company were. What we had a year ago was a very manual platform, and I'll explain. I'll show you what the company is now, and I'll explain where we were a year ago, and I'll talk about why some of the things that we've seen, which have been improvements, obviously, in generative AI and automation, meant that we could take something that, to be honest, was very mechanistic and was there to save recruiters time and effort and do something which they couldn't do before, to move to something that actually does something for recruiters. Instead of a recruiter having to use something, it does something actually for a recruiter and takes away a problem. And it's things which we couldn't do a year ago, and we've had to think really hard about how we solve those things. And we're really lucky because what we haven't done is we haven't used generative AI to solve a problem that we tried to shoehorn it into, but it's actually been things that have really helped us do stuff that has meant that we could do a completely automated experience, an automated platform, whereas sort of a couple of years ago we really couldn't. But if I'll explain a bit about it, show it, and we can talk about sort of what some of the prompts were, what some of the thinking were, not necessarily, I don't mean the sort of AI prompts, but what led us to these things. And I can also talk about some of the stuff that we have found from different enterprise that we've talked to, and different people who've sort of are people who we asked to recommend, or recruiters, and where we found sort of blocks and an opportunity as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And actually, I think that there are a couple of things that I would like us to dive into a little bit deeper, how you've done in Sixley, right? Because it's a lesson to everybody in learning and development. But yeah, let's dive it in. So maybe you could briefly introduce Sixley to everybody.
Yeah, sure. So where the idea of Sixley came from is I used to specialize actually in a completely different sector. I used to specialize in the television and media space. My last startup was called Knowledge Motion, renamed itself to ProClips, which became the world's largest video clip library for learning. So it provided content to digital learning platforms so that they could use video in their products, and it ended up representing pretty much every content owner in the world. And what I would find specializing in an area is I would get called by headhunters all the time asking me, can I recommend someone for a role? And they'd say, Paul, this isn't a job for you, but you know someone who could do X or Y. And when I was looking to hire, I would also get other recruiters, the in-house recruiters, and they would put people in front of me, and I'd just be like, hang on a sec, these people are rubbish. Why don't you talk to X or Y, and why haven't you worked this network? Because our networks or talk to some of our staff because they know some good people who could do these roles. And what it occurred to me is that there wasn't anything that was out there that could replicate that sort of magic that a headhunter does, which is about talking to relevant people within an industry or relevant people about a role, and then tease out recommendations or be said, or follow up on leads of who to talk to or get put in the right communities. And that's what we try to do with Sixley. We try to solve the problem that when you've got recruiting, the people who know the most about roles, which is staff or your communities or target people, and never engage in that process. And we thought, can we replicate that process digitally and find great people? And that's what we've aimed to do. We started out thinking about the problem being a problem of sort of joining the dots between the 6 degrees of separation. And what we also then, as we went on, realized is that the whole way that recruitment teams, etc., work is really broken, and they're not very effective. And so we had to do sort of a lot more on the product. Should I show a video just to explain what it is? Because then it's probably useful.
But in a nutshell, guys, it's a platform where pretty much a person can can refer other people, and this way actually the candidates are getting interviewed much more often. Like the rate is something crazy. It's something like in 60-70% of the cases when you are applying through this platform, you're getting to you're getting to an interview. And this is a very, very unusual thing. And one of these things is achieved through a high quality conversational AI.
So it's about 30 to 40% interview rates, and if you're individually recommended by somebody, then we do see, exactly as Lisa said, we see interview rates of 60 to 70%. Which, to contextualize that, if you apply through Indeed, historically you had a 2 to 5% chance of being interviewed. Nowadays that's dropped incredibly. I mean, you'll be lucky if 1 in 100 people these days gets interviewed on corporate jobs. So I'm just going to run a video. It's a few minutes because I didn't have a chance to shorten it down. So it's like a demo video, but I'm gonna do it. And if you're bored, tap away on your screen or something like that. Here we go. Actually, that's the wrong one.
Recruitment is broken. Talent is lost in a flood of AI noise. Headhunters and agencies can fix it, but it'll cost you 15 to 30%. That's straight off the bottom line. There is an alternative. Sixley Works your own networks, like a headhunter, every role, every time. We connect to over 250 ATS and directories, and once connected to yours, the magic happens.
We take every single job and get it ready to be shared, automatically adding rewards, descriptions, tone of voice, and imagery based on rules set by you. Using factors such as job title, reporting lines, location, and seniority, we find and contact relevant people in your company. We automatically manage contact frequency so people remain enthusiastic. Your staff get emailed in the name of the recruiter. They're given a link to a personal job microsite where they can apply, recommend someone, or share the role socially. Taking action is easy and secure, and if someone needs help, they can talk or text with Sasha, our AI headhunter. Sasha explains the role and answers questions. He also helps people think who to recommend through prompts or even a LinkedIn search link. He then captures recommendations ready for them to be sent out. Importantly, this is done at a low AI risk. That means enterprise isn't locked out.
People you recommend get an email from Sixley in your name with you CC'd. Or if you'd rather, you can recommend anonymously. You can also share the role socially. For instance, send it directly to someone by text, share with a group on WhatsApp, or post it to your wider community on LinkedIn. And even if an employee hasn't been asked this time, they can always go to one of your referral boards to see roles and make a recommendation.
This is where it gets interesting. Anyone who's been recommended or seen your share can apply themselves or recommend someone else. Sixley takes it from there, following up, tracking every connection and mapping the dots across the 6 degrees. So what happens when someone applies?
We ask for just enough relevant information to secure a telephone interview. Quick, simple, no friction. Because when applying is easy, we attract not only active job seekers, but passive talent too. We run an AI review of each applicant. It helps them see how they shape up and adds a note from Sixley for the recruiter. Because applicants choose whether the recruiter sees that note, the AI is low to moderate risk. And that matters for enterprise.
Applications go straight into the recruiter's ATS, so there's nothing new to learn. To the normal CV, we add provenance, the whole chain that led to the applicant, including who recommended them and why. And if recruiters want to see how the job is spreading across their network, they can do that at their own Sixley dashboard. Finally, we regularly poll the ATS for job status. So when someone's hired or rejected, we close out the recommendation chain, leaving no one hanging and making rewards where applicable, keeping everything clean while protecting applicant confidentiality throughout.
That's what happens when Sixley works your network.
Great. So hopefully that's an intro. That is something that we use to show to clients, and what we find with clients, because we've been using this in, sort of going up to enterprise and also smaller companies, is that when we start talking about AI, people are interested and want to use AI, but people are scared of it, and so what we've got to do, they're really scared of it. They're worried about the risks of bias. they're worried about the risk of it saying something that's uncontrolled, and will come through on corporate, you know, and would be off brand. So the key thing we've had to try to do is work out how we make a process, or how we make something that's very human but automated. And so the things that we've had to look at are also things about not making sure that we don't over profile, but we manage to talk to right people who will take certain amounts of action. And what we found about how we were using, you know, how we do our platform is that if it is automated, but we talk about everything with a human feel, but it's really clear to the person who's interacting with it that this has been automated. And the reason that that's important is because we don't want it to appear like it's spam. We don't want it to appear like it's something, it's trying to fake being something that it's not. But people need to know that they've been individually approached, or they're individually having a conversation, or they're individually doing something that is going to have impact to the person who's recommended them, or the person who comes after that. And so getting that blend right, that humanistic blend right, was really, really important for us. In terms of we have this AI agent called Sasha, and the conversations especially that we've had, you know, when we've, you know, sort of been using it, but also the arguments in our team have been really, really interesting. So some of the arguments in the team have been about, actually the whole interface should be just a voice agent, and, you know, and could we even use a, you know, a video avatar on it. So one, you know, on one extreme there's been an argument which has been over there, and another side has been, actually, if people know what they're doing, they don't really want to talk to somebody, they don't want to talk to somebody, they don't necessarily want to talk to a thing, they want to go and basically fill in a form. And so getting that blend right has been really, you know, sort of really important to us, because sure, we could run everything through having a voice interaction, and close the loop on the voice interaction, but what we found is that that's not necessarily optimum, because you start to try to use things that voice isn't very good at getting. Like, voice isn't very good at getting emails. Voice is very good at listening to you. So, you know, things like, you know, what we found is that if we're trying to get an individual to make a recommendation, or to think about someone, when they land on our site and they just see a box which says recommend somebody, share it, or I'm interested, if they're interested, that's fine, they're going to click that. If they don't know what they're doing, and they're, you know, sort of quite socially literate, they'll just socially share it. It's really simple to do, and they're going to get a reward if someone's had, pretty easy. But to get someone to recommend, which is our, you know, sort of, you know, that's the trophy for us that we want people to start thinking. So rather than just hit them with something and it says, oh, I can't think, we try to instigate a conversation. So that, and all we need from that conversation, the most important bit, is to be able to start a process where they might ask something about the role. You know, they're not necessarily going to feel comfortable, they're not necessarily going to think that they're talking to a human individual, because they know that they're not, but we want them to get comfortable and move them into the situation that they name a name. So if they name a name, if they go and say, okay, you know, Oliver, oh, can you think of somebody, you know, maybe someone you worked with before, someone who might have these skills, maybe have these keywords, you know, like things with this keyword matching. Hey, we can take you to LinkedIn and, you know, run the keywords against your contacts. The minute they say a name, which is like, you know, Oliver, then we would take that and say, move on to the last name. And then the listening that it does is all about people going, no, I don't know, actually, that's not helpful. And then what we ask is, we ask people to put a recommendation. And it's interesting when you hear some people, when some people talk to it, they talk to it as if it's a form. Some people talk to it at the beginning like it's a form. So they will say, it's like, you know, how can I help you? And someone will say, you know, more information, or salary, please, or something like that instead. But then when people get into it, then they're just like, realize that they can say, oh, you know, I don't know about this, you know, it is, you know, where's it based, or, you know, is it remote, or, you know, is this suitable for me to do X, Y, Z? And the beauty about conversational AI is that you can say something and it will try to understand that, and then it can come back and give you, obviously, responses. And that for us is about trying to help people not do something that they know they want to do, but do something that they didn't know that they could do, you know, in terms of thinking about somebody. And when we take a recommendation, we ask a question. We ask, you you know, if you come through the form, it says, I thought of you. Can you add a note to the person you're recommending? I thought of you because. And so instead of someone having to go off and type, I thought of you because, I mean, they can, you know, but actually that's quite a mental draw to actually work out, you know, what you're actually going to write in a couple of sentences. When we ask someone who's making a recommendation to do it, we hope normally, and they do it, but you know, they put that mental load into that recommendation. If it's a recruiter and you ask them to do something like that, like summarize a job in a couple of lines, they can't do it. So what we have, when you ask, why do you recommend that person? Why are you thinking about this person? Why is it relevant? Then it's interesting because people can go, oh, we used to work together a long time ago. I thought they were really good. You know, maybe they're ready for a change. And we can't put all of those ums and ahs and all of this, you know, sort of spiel like I'm banging on into something, but what it means is that conversational AI is listening to that, and then obviously it takes it and paraphrases it into something that, you know, something that can get shared. So the difficult bits about thinking about somebody, having that conversation, wasting time umming to keep them on that, to keep them engaged as they think through that process, that's what we use conversational AI for. And then what we did have that it could collect data like, you know, when somebody recommends, we might have their data, we might have their job, their name and email address already if they've been recommended by somebody else. But we can collect that data. So we were originally collecting that data as well from the conversational AI. People started that. So we say, what's your name and, you know, your email address, etc. Very quickly, we realized we couldn't complete the whole interaction just from that agent call because people get their names. The AI can't understand names. My real name is Paul Naha-Biswas or Paul Naha-Biswas. If I said it properly, AI can't get it. If I say what my email address is, AI can't get it. I have to start spelling it out. So what we realized is get the bits that we need to go and get. And then the other bits, we go and say, okay, that's brilliant. Now all you have to do is close this, and I've pre-populated the form. And we did have originally that the form we would take through the AI, you know, the recommenders, job title and name and email address, but we don't bother doing that now. We just ask the conversational AI bit to get the bit that people struggle with, which is who's a recommendation or what's the job about, but we get who's a recommendation, you know, why have you thought about them, have you got their email address, do you want to be CC'd in or do you want to stay anonymous in the process? Those are the things that we capture from the AI, and then we move them into a form. It means that they can review, it means that they can add to it, they can review it. The reviewing is really useful for us because from an enterprise perspective, the risk level has just dropped straight from, you know, one that they could argue is medium risk and potentially high risk. It's high risk bits that we've taken out of that process, and it drops all the way to low risk because anything which is there, they're just reviewing it in a form. They're reviewing those inputs in a form. So straight away, that's low risk, and that takes away that pressure out. So that's some of the stuff that we've done on that bit. And I think, Elisa, that was the bit you were quite interested in. And I think it was I think you were interested when I said actually what we use it for. The most important bit is not about what it says back to us. Speaking, just speaking. It's actually being able to understand and listen.
Yeah, it was fascinating to me. The exact phrase you used is what we have discovered is actually it's not important what AI is, not what AI is saying to you, it's how it listens to you.
Yeah,
that was a fascinating thing. So pretty much because from what I'm hearing in a nutshell, that personal personalization is very, very important, right? And second of all, the quality of how well AI is able to comprehend what are you saying to it and take conclusions from it, if that makes sense.
yeah,
yeah,
that was it. That was exactly our bit. And what we've found going on more things is being able to get tone right is obviously, you know, really important. I think everybody understands that, especially in the context which we operate in. And I think that's one of the biggest brilliant things about generative AI. Some of the other stuff that we've used is we've realized that recruiters and there's a whole bunch of small things that if we break down what we found is we thought when we first started this business, we thought that we were saving recruiters a week week and a half's time of them working their networks, you know, really going in, asking for recommendations and following up on each one of those. And so we thought we were saving them like a week's work. And then we realized that we weren't saving them a week's work, we were costing them work, because time and work originally, because they just weren't doing that activity, because it was so much work for them. Even with the results, they wouldn't do that activity before we created, you know, before we created our platform. They wouldn't do that activity. Once they had our platform, they would spend half an hour, but that's half an hour doing something that they wouldn't have done beforehand. So for the individual recruiter, it was just another thing that they had to do, even though they were getting better responses, and we were seeing you know, like up to 35% higher rates if 20 people in the firm are contacted. And so what we realized we had to do is take out the recruiter out of the mix. And obviously there are things that we do, which is sort of stuff in automation. There was stuff that we used to do when I was at Knowledge Motion, which was about, we had to match up about 3 million video clips to any curriculum, you know, around the world. And at the time when we did that, that was really time consuming and quite manual. And it's amazing that, you know, just a bit of, you know, just a call into our model, you know, sorts all of those things, you know, sorts all of those things out. We found it was little things like a recruiter, for instance, not being able to summarize a job in a couple of sentences, which was stopping them taking activity. So we just ended up finding that some of the easiest low level stuff, the stuff that we could do in like, you know, half an hour, could sometimes make the biggest differences to individuals.
Paul, that was there was one thing that sort of stood out to me. I want to see if you have any insight on, or any sort of key unlocks, was actually getting that referral, because it's a personal thing, right? To give out somebody you know's name, but it's really powerful. And I think that a lot of people building within L&D and all that can use that tool. But yeah, is there anything that you've noticed specifically?
Yeah, so the key thing about it is it comes down to how we get it is we do a lot of stuff which is around trust. So it's really important that the person who is being contacted, when we start the platform and we contact, you know, sort of people in the organization, every time someone's contacted, it's very personal. So the platform itself goes out, you know, it's obviously personalized by name. It's coming from somebody who they know, or the recruiter, or the hiring manager, or, you know, somebody who might, you know, sort of work above them or something. So when it kicks out, they're being asked for a specific reason. The relevance is really important. So we found on the emails that we did, when we created, and we tested this for a lot, and we saw this in action, when we do really super short emails. So when we first started out, we tried super short emails, and what we found is that there was, for people who like those super short emails, they really like them, but 50% of people thought they were spam, because they were too short. And so then we went and made all the emails a bit more, you know, a bit longer. I took advice from my wife, who works in marketing and in advertising, and she was just like, look, you know, they're not going to think it's spam when it goes out if it's personal. So it references their role. It might say something, if it's coming from the business, it'll just reference that, you know, as you may know, we're looking for X, Y, Z, but the roles are relevant, so it goes out. If somebody else recommends a person, so if Oliver, you were contacted for a role and you recommended Elisa, then when Elisa gets the email, you're CC'd in it. It's coming from you, but that's just behind a Sixley email, but it's, you know, it's got you written in it. You're CC'd in unless you've gone anonymously. There's a recommendation. There's a line, I thought of you because of X, Y, Z. The role is contextual, so it's relevant to people. So people tend to trust it. When we talk about Sixley, we're not a white label tool. So when we deploy for a client, we don't just fade into the background. We're there as this trust authority. So, you know, like why you know, we're in partnership with BT, Sixley, you know, that's done. So it's like recommendations. We're using Sixley to manage securely recommendations. And so when we take that information and somebody makes a recommendation, we don't give that to BT, we don't give that to NEC, we don't give that to Clifford Chance. We hold that information. There are visualizations that the recruiter can see to see how far the job's matched, but it's all anonymous until the point that somebody applies. And only when somebody applies is that information spread out there. We don't think, it's really interesting, is that we don't think unlike other people. We don't do gamification. So and I think it's something that we will introduce, but we'll introduce it carefully. We don't do gamification. We don't do gamification because other 1-degree referral platforms do gamification. And we don't like gamification because gamification is all about the money. And people do not make recommendations for the money. That's one of the key things. Their motivations and incentives are about they're doing it because they're humanly helping somebody either up the chain, who's asked them to do something, or down the chain, somebody who they're doing a favor for or introducing it to. The social capital when they socially share, they don't know that, but that's what people find. If I sent you a role that was relevant and you shared it on your LinkedIn, what's really interesting is people come and message you, not just job seekers, but people are just like, oh, it's really interesting, blah blah blah, you're doing something on this, etc. So for a lot of people who, we all are around here and post at times or stay quiet if we're being quiet, but a lot of employees don't post very much, and this gives them a way that they can post and keep their social capital. So the motivating factors: one, confidentiality; two, relevance is really, really important, that it's relevant to them. And the third thing is be aware of motivations and don't motivate them for the wrong reasons. We do talk about the money, but we've moved the number of the money, away from email, etc.
And with that as well, like, because I think that's quite an interesting point, is without getting a human involved, how do you qualify the quality of the candidate?
Yeah, so that's really interesting. What we found is if somebody recommends somebody, the quality tends to be quite high. And so what we do is we show at the end when somebody does apply, we show the provenance. So it's come from this person who said this about someone. So right at the beginning, when someone's reviewing, a recruiter is reviewing the information, they know it's coming from Sixley, which is their sort of the way that they're getting recommendations or social shares. And then they see provenance, and it's actually what we found is that the quality level tends to be much higher than they would get normally. If you talk to a recruiter at times, especially if it's a large corporate, 95% of applications will be completely irrelevant to their role. Not just that they're not good, they just can sometimes be just completely irrelevant. And what we do is we provide context, and people tend to be relevant. What we're introducing, but we're treading cautiously on this because it's slightly controversial given our position, is that we are we've got like now a sort of not a screen, because we don't want to screen people. We say we don't screen people. People go in, they might get screened by the company's applicant tracking system, but we don't screen. But what we are introducing is a review. So if you are applying, and this came from if you talk to Sasha, or the agent, when you're before you apply, it won't tell you. If you ask, am I a good fit for the role, should I apply for this role, it won't tell you. It's got guardrails on to say I can't tell you. I can't tell you, but why don't you? At the moment, it says I can't tell you, but why don't you apply, drop a note to the and put something in the notes to the recruiter, and they'll let you know. What we're doing now is that when you do go in to say I'm interested in the role, it will take your the recommendation that somebody, if it's any data it's got, the recommendation they had before, the job description, it will take your CV if you put it up, your LinkedIn public profile, the answer to any questions you've got, and it will take that in, and it will create for you a private view just for you of your fit. It does it so it's not a harsh review, but it is it's a couple of sentences on whether it thinks that you're a great fit or it's uncertain. And then it creates a note for the recruiter, which goes and says, and it says everything we say it's our AI, Sixley's AI, review, etc. And so it says on that, a note for the recruiter, Sixley's AI position, you should reasons to meet, why you should interview Oliver, and it would say X, Y, Z, etc. Things to probe in interview, and it will say a couple of bullet points of things to probe in interview. Now the applicant sees this, and it is their decision. There is an explicit tick box as to whether they include that in the application or not. The reason we tread so carefully about this, and you'll have this in L&D, you'll have this in everything, you know, because you're sort of similar on this. The reason we tread so carefully on this is because if we're using AI to make decision making about whether somebody goes through to interview or not, then we enter an entire world of pain and review, and we come into the whole bit about, you know, is this black box, is it transparent, is it fair, and you have to go through loads and loads of fair assessments. And actually a lot of enterprises now will just turn to you and just say, do you know what, I'm not that bothered. We give people the ability to turn off that functionality, you know, if they want to. But, you know, our key bit about it is that we reduce the risk level down from there, from high risk down to low to moderate risk, because we put the person who's seeing this in control. The reality of that is that if we go and say it's inclusive, we can't really see why you're relevant to it, then of course we put them off. I mean, that's the whole point of it. You know, we want to put them off. We don't, you know, we want to be, you know, we want to be good. We think that is something. It'll be interesting to see how that goes when it hits into volume, that bit, and we just got to, you know, sort of do that very carefully. But we did that because sometimes if people socially share a role, we thought originally when we created social share functionality, we thought that we would get really low quality applicants, and we tend not to. There tends to be something like a 30-40% interview rate on socially shared people, as long as the hiring manager or someone in the hiring manager's team or someone who's relevant to that role from the company has socially shared it. And so the whole mechanism that we do, in terms of the mechanism we do, means that people, you know, sort of when they recommend people, they only recommend people they like. Our issue isn't about them recommending too many wrong people, it's about getting them to recommend in the first place. The second issue is on the social share bit. We thought we were going to get low quality people from social shares. We don't. We get good at people from social shares. We are instigating some help for people who are applying for a role to come and see where they are, and if they, you know, want that recommendation from us, or that AI recruiter note from us goes back to the recruiter. We're instigating that because we're trying to go and make sure that we can filter out some of that 60% that don't get interviewed from social shares, in, you know, sort of bring that down. So does that help about how we?
Yeah. No, I think the, you know, one thing that stands out to me there is something that's actually really similar in communities, where it is, you know, on the personal level, when you recommend somebody, you don't gain anything really from recommending something bad.
Yeah.
Where, like, same as the community, when you make posts in a community, you don't gain anything out of that. You only gain once you make real connections with people.
Yeah.
Vice versa, you only gain when you make, you know, a really great recommendation, because the person, your candidate, will love the role and they'll be like, that was beautiful, thank you very much. So just that parallel I wanted to draw. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, but it's a really good point. That's the thing.
Alyssa, do you have any last ones to close us out?
I have many, but I wanted to ask actually Paul about your, out of curiosity, the well, I'm interested in conversational AI, but I think that it will have to be some other time. But I wanna ask you about what is your secret sauce in your rapid company growth, because you did, at least from what I've seen in public sources, is like a really cool. Well, I mean, it looks like magic. So what's your secret?
Oh, it's not really. It's not rapid growth. I mean, it's interesting. It's nice that you say it. We sort of had stuff, you know, sort of lines up. We've just started going out to market now. How are we doing go to market? We just started. We had issues with working with someone like BT. Has been brilliant, because you right size, you learn all the stuff, you go through all the stuff that you can't get someone to pay. You know, you can't pay someone to tell you this stuff, and that's why we did the partnership with them. The downside is it's really slow. What we have done in terms of people we're working with is we went through and we worked with Nick Trim, who was the and he's on our board, and he was one of the 5 co-founders of Darktrace, and he was the guy who was stuck in charge of Chief Revenue Officer, because he wasn't technical and he wasn't like Poppy from finance, Instead, he used to run intelligence teams from MI5 or MI6. I'm not sure which one it was, but this UK Secret Service, and he was a spy and everything. So they put him in charge of revenue. He didn't know any better, so he created a really strong playbook, and he built loads of graduates on, and he just rolled that out. And what he said to us is, he said, look, guys, you've just got to go in and you've just got to be able to do proof of values. He's very much a proof of values to a proof of concept, guy. And he said, you just got to go in, be able to just do it, set them up, and then, be able to close it if they don't want to do it and threaten to walk away. And when we looked at everything we had, we were just like, oh my God, we can't do that. It's such a big setup for people. We have to train people in. And so when he's brought this to us, we've changed the whole way that we did everything to make it really, really just automated. So, and what that gave us is, it gave us confidence that it was automated, it was right size. We understood the difference between the personal bits and the non-personal bits. We had to look at what we do to get into people's ATSs without having to do custom ATS integrations and builds, which was like a problem in itself. And with that level of confidence, we started to deploy that proof of value playbook. We looked at stuff and we first started thinking, oh, which industries does it work for or not? We started talking to people. We realized actually we're pretty neutral, apart from really heavily regulated sectors like agriculture. In when you do recruitment, you don't want to do agriculture and things like that. And then what we did is we just deployed this book that we'd done from a founder-led bit. We had intros into enterprise, so we went through to talk to a number of enterprises. We did some partner-led work with a company called Wiser, which is where we got a bunch of stuff for grads. And then we started to form what we would do as our business as usual ICP, because we realized enterprise was taking a long time. And we realized that our minimum floor was 500. We do a cap of around 5,000, but actually that could go to 10,000. The key bit about it really is, are we able to talk and be able to show that this is a C-suite level problem for a company? And that's where we picked our ICP. We really worked at how we explain what we do, not just from a product way, but from a what's going wrong way. And what we also realized is that people will start talking to us about what went wrong with other platforms that they do, and we don't do those things. There are loads of things that we could do that we specifically don't do, like especially when it comes to data. So we don't. If you're an employee, we don't ask the employees to sign up to something and then give us all of their contact data, and then we just mine that. So we've really learned by spending time with companies what they don't like and what they don't like and what they do like. We don't have to be the most technically, in inverted commas, we don't have to use the world's technologically advanced way to make a solution. So people will say to us, it's really interesting, sometimes investors will turn to us and say, oh, do you so for the employees, do you understand their networks and then do automatic matches between the job and the employees' networks? And we say we don't. And people say, well, why not? Shouldn't you be doing that? And we're saying we don't do that because actually, if you're a recruiter, you might as well do a LinkedIn search. It's exactly the same as doing a LinkedIn search. There's no serendipity. There's no human recommendation. You have just done keyword matching. And we all talk about what AI can do. Keyword matching has been done, and extended network matching has been done for the last 10 years in recruitment, and it doesn't lead to great results, and it pisses people off and it burns people through on a campaign basis. So actually what we did is we said, okay, we're going to apply the technology to a different situation, which was, how do we apply technology to make human beings able to actually recommend, actually have influence, actually put social capital on, actually get us into places to make recommendations and then chain them up. So we looked at the thing in a slightly different way, because we spent the time with those enterprises, with those companies. And now what happens is, I've got emails here now when I'm talking to people, and it's just like people are saying to us, and we have InfoSec. I mean, Elisa, we talked about it yesterday. There's procurement, there's InfoSec, there's all of that type of stuff that goes on. But actually, we get from the people we talk to, and they're saying it's a no-brainer. And that's the mantra we try to say. We just say, look, guys, not being funny, but why are you spending all this money on recruitment? Why are you doing all this, battling with everything like this, spending money on agencies and headhunters? when you're not even asking your own staff, and your staff are the best in the business, and you're not even asking them about it, you know, and like, it's a no-brainer to do it, but we just take away all that work, just make it happen in the background. Don't piss people off, don't steal their data, don't make them have to sign up. So it was all of that stuff that we had to rebuild. So Elisa, you're right, we're in a really different place to where we were last year, and we did a huge amount, and it was about people like having Nick Trim on, it was bringing some recruiters on, it was basically being able to solve some of the really bloody irritating technical stuff. It was about the fact that AI was just AI, and some of the stuff which we have in unified APIs, which have become fashionable now, you know, just suddenly came on board, and so it just meant that we were able to do, you know, what we did. So yeah, the jump has been quite big for us. We're still, you know, at the beginning of going to market. We've got 15 to 20 companies, you know, coming on, either using us or coming on this quarter. But you know, it's still, you know, early days. But things are like that. Early days are just take a long time, and then it goes up, as my, you know, we found out with my last startup. So yeah, interesting. Does that help? Is that interesting or not particularly?
Yeah, I think so. At least encouraging.
Very much so. Thank you.
Thank
Great.
you, Paul.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I'll let you guys go.
Yep. Thank you so much for joining us. After this, we'll sort of put some edits together on this before we publish it anywhere, and of course send it over to you to have a quick look if you'd like.
Yeah, brilliant.
But again, thank you so much for sharing that with the community here.
No worries. Great to meet you all.
Lovely to meet you too.
Thank you. Nice
Cheers.
meeting you, Paul, again.
Brilliant.
See ya.
See you.
Bye bye.